Hi, my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, Savage Reads, and welcome back to another book wrap-up. I have filmed this video before, and when I got done with filming, I realized I was tripping over my words so much it was going to take me way longer to edit it than just if I started over again. So take two, we're going to jump into that. But very first thing is another one of my embroidery updates. So for an embroidery update, I did finish my last project, and this is how it turned out. We've got this, and I will put up next to it the picture of what I was trying to get it to look like. I do think I messed up a little bit on some of the contrast, and so I don't know if you quite get the right dimension or things sticking out, but it turned out okay. And I'm happy to have tried something a little bit different. And now I have started a new project, and I will show you the picture of what I am aiming for here. I am not doing the stroller in the middle, so I'm thinking of doing something a little more mixed media for the path. I don't know if I want to find a cool ribbon or if I want to knit something and do it as an applique. I don't know. The path, I still am thinking of ideas. If you have any good ideas, let me know. But this is where I am so far. So I've gotten things traced out, fabric all prepped, and I actually started with hot glue and then covered some of these tree trunks with the hot glue. And now I'm just working my way through all of the fall leaves. So once I'm done with the fall leaves, I'll really need to figure out the path and then how to do the ground with the fallen leaves. But I'm excited about this one. It is going to be a little bit different, and it's fun to try some new skills. So that is my embroidery project update, and let's jump into the books. The first book that I want to talk about is Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lennon, and I'm just going to read a little of the description. It's on the island of Sicily amid the Peloponnesian War. The Syracusans have figured out what to do with the surviving Athenians who had the gall to invade their city. They've herded the sorry prisoners of war into a rock quarry and left them to rot. And so that is kind of how it starts, and then we have this kind of comedic pair who decides, you know what? We really love some of the theater that comes from Athens. Why don't we get these Athenians to help us put on a play? And they put on a full-blown production of Medea. And this book is really interesting because it is using a modern-day Irish vernacular. I do recommend this on the audiobook because that comes across a lot better. And I thought that that was an interesting way to approach it because it feels a lot more modern, but we are set so long ago. You also get this classic theater, classic tales kind of feel. And so I thought that that was a really interesting premise, and it was supposed to be humorous. But where it got me was I just lacked some connection to these characters, especially to the Athenians. And I feel like the Athenians really needed to be very humanized, and they are in this really awful situation, right? And I never felt like I was super worried about them when I should have been. And I don't know if that was my fault in the attention I was paying the book, or if it was something with the writing, because I just never found myself super engaged with this. And so by the end, I wasn't happy or sad when anything happened. It was just fine. And one thing that concrete that did kind of throw me out of it is, so when I read, I don't typically notice if a book uses a lot of strong language, but this book managed to shoehorn expletives into sentences in the most creative ways, and so often it kind of pulled me out of the story, and usually I wouldn't even notice. And this one felt just really excessive, and so that did kind of throw me out of the story. I don't know if that was the only thing, but because really I just didn't find myself connecting to this on a deeper level. So it was too bad because I thought the premise was pretty interesting, and maybe I wasn't in the right mood for something like this. I'm not sure. I have had the problem the past few weeks where I've started books, been a little bored, and had to put them down, but this just didn't really work for me. I just couldn't get engaged. So this next book was a recommendation from Ray at A Giant Cup of Coffee, so I will make sure to link her channel down below, and I picked up Good Material by Dolly Alderton. And this book is following our main character, Andy, and he's just gone through a breakup. And it was a long-term relationship. He'd been in this relationship for 5 years, has no idea why it ended, and he's just blindsided and devastated. Rightly so. Having this big event in your life, what do you do? Now, he is a stand-up comedian, and his life isn't really going anywhere. So he has this life that's not going anywhere, and when this relationship blows up, he has no idea what to do with himself. He's trying to solve this mystery of what went wrong and trying to pick up the pieces. Now, we also do get the side of his ex-girlfriend for the last little bit of the book, which was super necessary and really good to see both sides. Now, I do think that this is a genre that I have seen quite a few times in books. This late 30s to middle-aged kind of crisis, relationship problems, where do we go from here? I feel like I've read this book before. But while I feel like I've read this book before, I don't think I've read it done this well, because it managed to be both humorous and insightful, and it seemed to be very real. It wasn't making it some crazy romance. It wasn't making anything. It was just people trying to move on from difficult situations, and I thought it was really well done that way. So while this is probably not my favorite genre, sometimes I just put down a book when I'm like, ugh, another 40-year-old man going through a divorce, or, like it just, I can't quite connect on a deeper level or care. This one did a good job. I really did enjoy it. I do think it did a good job at doing that. One side of the story, the other side of the story, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. And as the reader, you feel like you are getting the truth and you are getting some good insights into life. And so that was meaningful. And this does say that it's classified as a romance. I would not classify it as a romance. If anything, it is the opposite of a romance. It is, the whole thing is how a relationship disintegrates. And so I did like it. If you are interested in this genre, you like this genre, you're gonna love this one. Even if you aren't interested in this genre but wouldn't mind picking one up, this is a good one. Next book I put on my list because of the channel The Book Bully, but I have heard so many people talk about it. I finally picked up Doppelganger, A Trip into the Mirror World by Naomi Klein. And I didn't really know what I was getting into, but this is following Naomi Klein, and she is writing about her kind of obsession with being mistaken for Naomi Wolf. And having this doppelganger in real life where people think they are the same person, and having someone else's words attributed to her. And it starts out like that, but then moves into this discussion of the upside down kind of mirror effect of people who share a lot of your ideals or issues or preoccupations, and how that can get twisted into kind of this upside down sort of way that is almost unrecognizable. I thought the idea was really good. There were some things that stood out to me. Now, this book was very focused on pandemic time. And so if you do not want to think about the pandemic, don't go into this book, because a lot of her examples are coming from that time period. And some of the ideas that really stood out to me were some of the conspiracy theorists during the pandemic, and how people were worried that the vaccine was going to put a microchip in them and follow them around. And I remember seeing the memes online. Oh, just wait till they hear about your phones. You think the government's tracking you all day? Wait till they hear about the phone you keep in your pocket. Of course you're being tracked all day. And I really liked the call out that Klein did in this book, where she said, they know about the phones. Why these people were turning to these conspiracy theories were because they know about the phones. They know that we're being watched through all of this technology we have around us, but there's not much we can do about it. And clinging on to these ideas that there is something that they can actively do to have control over that is really appealing to a lot of people. And so I appreciated the way that she reframed some of these ideas that I see people getting sucked into as things that, while not being the best for them, are coming from a somewhat rational place. And she talks about how in order for us to feel like we didn't want to be lumped in with the conspiracy theorists, did we fail to challenge things? We went along with all these stay-at-home orders and everything during the pandemic, but did we ignore the real mental health crisis that many young people were having, being stuck at home? Did we fail to push for reimaginings to school systems with smaller class sizes, outdoor learning? Did we fail to push back because we wanted to not be lumped in with people who were believing a crazy conspiracy theory? And I think that continues on now. She talks about that. Are we not wanting to be lumped in with the outside group that we aren't challenging the power structures that be? And so I think that was a really interesting idea and very important to think about, because so often you think, well, as long as I'm not like them, as long as I'm not like that group, I'm fine. And it will cause you to go along with things that you probably wouldn't. She has a section in the book where she talks about parenting and talks about how some parents look at their kids as a double of themselves, as that little doppelganger, and how can they mold them in their own image, versus do you see your child as an individual that you are merely guiding? And I thought that was an interesting way to look at parenting and make sure that you are valuing your children for those individual traits that they have. And her whole discussion around autism was very interesting and insightful. And so I thought her parenting section was really well done. She talks a lot about individualism and do we focus so much on our individual safety and health that we think that we got to where we are because of our own merits, or do we recognize that there are systems in place that don't allow things to be equal? And are we fighting for community growth and a more community-minded approach? She talks about these theories and these ideas that people bring up that might on the surface seem kind of awful. You may look at someone who says, oh, well, it's this specific group of people that is making it so I can't be successful. And at the root of that, what they are feeling is that I was fed this lie that I could be successful from whatever circumstance, and since I can't, it must be someone else's fault, instead of realizing that it's not an individualistic thing, it is a community thing where everyone was told this lie, and we need to work for community actions that we can help to lift and build those around us, and that this highly individualized society leads people to feeling really disillusioned when they can't make that work for them. And so I thought that was a really interesting discussion to be had. I think where this book was the most successful for me was in helping me feel like I could make more valuable connections with those around me. Now,
well, I had to film this so many times just to get my thoughts out correctly and still didn't manage to do it. So I think that my main takeaway from the book is that sometimes we look at others and feel like we just have fundamental differences. And we actually can look at it and see that we have some of the same feelings if we can get back to those origins, we can find some creative solutions. So an example would be if someone is against immigration, it might be because the American dream just didn't work for them and they're looking for someone to blame. And I think while you may find their stance on immigration to be morally wrong, you may still be able to understand that these social systems have made them feel disillusioned in their lives. And if we look for that point of connection, we can find creative solutions and get away from the divisive issues, but get to the heart of the matter, where I do think that there are ways to find connection, even with people that feel so far gone from what feels right or acceptable to you?
So while this book had a lot of fantastic ideas, I do think it was a little scattered and the author kept trying to pull it back to, and it's all fitting in my Doppelgangers theme, and it kind of wandered to a lot of topics, and I don't know if I could quite condense it to that exact same idea, but I thought it was definitely worth picking up. I found so many interesting things to think about. I definitely recommend this to people who are liberal leaning and who will agree with the ideas in this book, because I don't think this book was written to change the minds of the conspiracy theorists. That's not what this book's goal was. This book was written to you if you're a bit more liberal-minded. It's written to you to help you understand where these different movements are coming from. And I liked it. It made me think. It had a lot of really interesting ideas. And this last book was a recommendation from the channel The Cat Bite. And I finally got around to reading A Darker Shade of Magic by Victoria E. Schwab. And this book is following a man who can do magic and travel between different Londons. There are a few different versions of London and he travels between them. And he finds an artifact that does not belong in the London that it's in, and he needs to get rid of it before it can destroy all of the other Londons. And it was a fantasy book, and it was fun, and I liked it. But my reading experience was weird because I told you I have had just the most crap attention span. So I started this book, I listened to this book, and I got an hour in, had no idea what was happening. I had zero idea of what had happened, and I had to start the whole thing all over again. And I'm glad I gave it another chance, because I could definitely have seen myself this past week thinking, okay, well, if I didn't get anything out of the hour, it's probably just the book's fault. But I'm glad I gave it a second chance, because once I got a good way in and actually paid attention to the audio, I really got engaged. I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it enough that I want to read the next one, which is saying a lot for this book, because I have been so against book series lately, mostly because I just can't be on hold for books and then forget what happened in the book before I get to the next one. It just drives me nuts. But I liked this enough that I am on hold for the second book. And so if you want a fun fantasy escapism kind of book, yeah, jump into this. I had a great time. It was enjoyable, it was fun, and I'm gonna pick up the other one. And that is what I have read the last week or so. If you have any thoughts on these books, let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you all on the next one.